So this video is really looking at After Effects and how to bring in an image sequence into After Effects so that we can use it as a video clip. So once we've rendered the files in Maya, we're saving them as an image sequence. This is so that if there's a failure in the renders, it won't completely ruin the job. So we're working on single frames. If we're saving that as a video file and one of the frames goes wrong, then the whole video file will be ruined and we can't use it, it'll be corrupt. So what we need to do is import this. You can import this directly into Edit Suites. My workflow tends to bring it into After Effects, and that allows me to process it slightly before I bring it in. So I'll go to Import File from the File menu, and then I will locate the image sequence that I want to work with. Now I've saved some of these in this folder. I'll just try and expand that so I can see a bit better. And got one copying right now. This one here. It's actually copying over right at the moment. So I will just give that a little moment to copy across. One of them's nearly done, so I'll just wait for that to come through. But the thing we need to know about when we import it is the frame rate. What frame rate were we working at? After Effects will default to 30 frames a second because it's an American software company. So we may need to change it into 25 frames a second to get the right pace for that. We've also got an option of whether we're using alpha channels on this as well. So if there's a part of the picture that is see-through, transparent, we can tell it to use that or not use that. Now when things are rendered in Maya, it may be that you're using an environmental background, in which case sometimes it will hide that when you bring it in here and you have an alpha channel in the same way. So in this folder here I've got an image sequence. It's called EasyRender 00001.png, and on the options here I've got PNG sequence. So it knows it's a sequence, and I'll just open the first one and it will bring that in as a footage file. So that comes into top of After Effects here. If it's an Edit Suite, it will bring it into a clip and it may compile it into a video format as well. So I've got 400 frames, so it says EasyRender 0001 to 0400.png. If I double click on that, I can scroll through it. So this is really very much just a test render to make sure I've got a sequence working. I can also see the information up here about the settings on this. Now I've set my preferences so that I will import footage at 25 frames per second. If you're working on shared machines, that may change each time. So if you bring it in wrong, we can right click the object, interpret footage. This is how do we work with this footage. We can bring up the main window for that, and we can define the attributes of this, particularly the frame rate in here. So if we did want it to be a different frame rate, if I did want 30 frames a second, I can do that in there and press OK. It's also got an option with alpha mats. If it does have an alpha channel on it, I don't think this one does, you have the option to ignore that or to use the mat as it is. So I am going to keep that on 25 frames a second. If you want to change the preferences, After Effects Preferences, General or Import, I think it's on Import, allows you to state the frames per second of your import. So that's why it's bringing it in at 25. So then I don't have to set that each time. So once I've done this, if I want to just make this into a clip, I can right click it again and say new composition from selected. So everything within After Effects works as a composition, and it's opened that up for me. I could double click it if it was closed. If I shut these down, nothing there. If I double click it, it will open that composition, and I have a timeline with that in After Effects right here. I can turn this on and off. I can also import audio tracks in here if I wanted to have audio, and that can get turned on and off as well. There's no audio track on a PNG sequence, but I would generally do the audio editing in the video edit system as well. So let me just save that file here. So I can save that. It's already got a file name. But if I was working with Premiere, After Effects and Premiere have a nice link, so I can import that directly into Premiere as a composition, and then every update I do after that, I haven't got it installed, but I can, when I'm in Premiere, import that into my sequence by selecting this After Effects file and that composition, and that will become a video clip for me. The advantage of working that way is that I can come back to this file and make some changes to it. So when we get a slightly more advanced sequence, we can see how we might work with that as well. So it may be that I may want to color correct it. I might want to change the levels. The whites may be just too bright for me. I can add an effect to that clip, and I can tell it to bring the white levels down. Just so it's not too glaring. You can also change the balance of where the grey is on that as well. So you may do some color correcting in here. Another thing I would quite often do is add some kind of noise or blurring to it, and I would do that in here. So we have the blurring options and some other aspects to that as well. You may add film noise or whatever. You can use most of these effects in Premiere as well, but it may be that I just want to make it look a bit less CG, in which case I can add some kind of noise to it, because these colors are very flat in this instance. If I want to make this into a video file with the composition selected, so it's gone into the effects controls here, I can go back to the project window. I can select the composition here, or I can click in the composition window, but I can say add to render queue, which will allow me to make the render in After Effects right here, or I can send it to Media Encoder, which will do that for me as well. So you can have a kind of batched queue going on in Media Encoder, or I can add it to the render queue here, and it will give me an option of where do I want to save this file. If I click on the output, I can find a location for that. I've just saved that in my Creative Cloud file. And the project settings, if you want to do, it defaults to best quality, which is full resolution for your composition. But you've also got the output. So I'm working on an Apple machine, so I'm using ProRes. If you're on a PC and you're going to use Avid, you might want to use an Avid format, but you can change the format options in here. If it's a final piece of work that you want to load onto YouTube or something like that, it's probably best to use something like H.264 MPEG, but within that I've only got the ProRes one, which gives me a lossless type of file as well. So you've got all your options on how you're going to export that, whether you want to export audio with it or not, and what format the audio is, and then I can press OK. So if I press render now, it will just go through all of those file images and compile that into a movie file for me. If that's taking up all my processing power, I want to pause it. I can do. If I press Shift on the keyboard, it won't update the screen. The Shift lock, it won't update the screen. If I stop it partway through, it would sort of set up a new render for where that finished. So then if I set that going again, or I turn that on and then set it going again, it will finish off my render for me. But I should have that original file in my Creative Cloud folder. If I look in there by date modified, turn it the right way around. Date modified, easy render. So it's still processing one, which is a small one, but the first one, it is a movie file. It's not compressed, so that should edit. It's using the ProRes codec, so it's not compressed and is suitable for editing. And it should come up as a video file within that. So that's compiling it into a movie file that can go into my edit suite. I haven't got Premiere Pro open, but if I was working in Premiere Pro, I would say import. I would select the After Effects project file, and then it would give me the option of which composition I want to import, and that will render it in Premiere for you, and it will allow it to update within the scenes. That's generally how I do it. I know you can directly import image sequences into Premiere as well. Same way, import, select the first file, and that will bring it in as a clip, and it will probably pre-render it for you for playback. So I'll just let that run through to the end of that, and also if I stop my copying here, it should have copied some already. That's the famous After Effects sound saying I finished. If you get a sheep noise, it means it's failed the render. So it'll give it meh. So listen out for that. That means your render didn't work. So I just wanted to try and find these files that I was copying, which were slightly more interesting than that render test. So I'm going to view these by a list, by date. Hopefully I will find camera 2. Okay, so I've copied some. I'm going to go into this one here. These are .exr files. So these give me an open EXR sequence. These I can't really get a preview of because they're not a standard file. It's missing 7 frames. That may have been something to do with the render farm. I'm going to close down that composition. I'm just pressing Apple W to close it down. And I'm going to make a new composition from my selection, which opens up in here. So this allows me to see the render. Should be able to play through. So they're quite large files, so it is processing it very slowly. There's a watermark coming up because some of the machines it was rendered on didn't come out 100%. But once it's got this green line across the top, it means it's pre-processed that, and I should be able to get a real-time preview from that. If I've got a little flash like that, the color bars means there's a frame missing, so it's put in that color bar for me as a marker for that as well. So once that's played through, and I've got a green line all the way along the top of this, I should be able to get a real-time playback. So this is telling me how many frames per second it's running at, but I'm getting a better idea of how that works. So in the same way, if I want that to be, if I click, that should stop. No, if I press stop, that will stop. Again, if I want that to be a video file, I can add it to the render queue and render that as a video file that I can import normally. And the EXR files gives me a lot of dynamic range to play with in terms of color correction. I'm just going to do a very basic one for now. It seems quite blue, but it was designed that way. But I might want to just do a color balance. And sometimes it's nice to desaturate things slightly. Just make it slightly grayer. And you can actually adjust the exact color you got with that as well. I'd set that up already, so I'm not going to change that too much. But that's allowing me to kind of just get that final tweaks on what I've done. And yeah, basically I would send that out to a render file from there.